This is The Download from Sounds Profitable, the most important news from this week and why it matters to people in the business of podcasting. I'm Newton Shottelcotti.
And I'm Gavin Gaddis.
The Download is brought to you by Podscribe. Find out more at podscribe.com.
This week, how podcasting can make people say, ooh, that one only works in text, but I promise you it's funny. Spotify rebrands podcast platform, launches partnership program. M&A activity increased across 2024. And Kantar looks at podcast advertising KPI effectiveness. Let's get started. This Wednesday, Sounds Profitable's Tom Webster invited podcasters to touch grass in the name of the craft. Finding and developing your audience can feel like it mostly takes place online where podcasts live, but a key guarantee of a podcast success is whether people are engaging with it, i.e. listening on the go and talking about it with friends and family in the real world. Taking your podcast advertising game to the real world in relevant places like local movie theaters for a movie podcast or sports bar restrooms for a sports recap podcast can draw already interested audiences to your show at places they're not already being bombarded with a million online ads. A quote from Webster in the article, quote, "The great thing about this kind of advertising is you don't have to eat the elephant all at once. If your brain flashed to what it would cost to buy run of toilet ads for Buffalo Wild Wings nationwide, this is not a thing you have to do. Start local. Again, if your show is ready for the grand opening sign, you just need to start somewhere. If 25 people try your show after a weekend of sports bar advertising and those new listeners tell their buddies, you're on your way. In fact, local advertising, period, is underused in podcasting." End quote. From a booth at your local festival to finding ways to engage your own community at home, Webster suggests starting local.
This Thursday, Spotify for Podcasters is being rebranded to Spotify for Creators, which includes a new monetization program. The Spotify Partner Program, currently available to creators in the US, Canada, Australia, and the UK, opens monetization options for podcasts that reach the threshold. The program has been heavily compared to YouTube's creator monetization features, suggesting Spotify is continuing to get serious about supporting video podcasting. According to Pod News reporting, the program requires at least 12 episodes, 2,000 unique Spotify users interacted in the past month, and 10,000 streamed hours in the past month. For comparison, YouTube's partnership program threshold is 1,000 all-time subscribers and 4,000 streamed hours in the past year. Creators in the SPP earn a share of revenue whenever Spotify plays an ad on the content at designated time codes the podcaster chooses. Video podcasters in the program will have their content presented ad-free for Spotify Premium users, with the podcaster paid for watch time instead of direct ad revenue. In addition to the new monetization, Spotify for Creators comes with the ability to add thumbnails and promotional clips to podcast episodes. Other companies popular in the podcast industry are already jumping on board with tools to support this launch, such as Headliner debuting new resources for making video clips on Spotify.
This Wednesday, Digiday reported on this past quarter in the merger and acquisitions world, which saw significant growth, with the overall volume of M&A activity increasing 13% quarter over quarter. A trend in the mergers and acquisitions of later is rationalization deals that aim to consolidate or expand the purchaser into new markets. With companies like Samba TV and Integral Ad Science both exploring purchasing options, Q3 2024 was a huge quarter for growth in the ad tech industry. Michael Seidler, CEO of M&A advisory firm Madison Alley, told Digiday, quote, "Many companies didn't perform well last year and took a little while to get back on track this year. Now that you see companies getting close to 12 months of good performance behind them, things are starting to happen," end quote. Podcasting is no slouch in the M&A game, such as the recent Insignia Capital acquisitions of Lower Street Studios and Veritone One, which will eventually merge the two companies and bring podcast advertising to a previously podcast-less Insignia portfolio.
This Thursday, international market research company Kantar took a look at the claims of podcast advertisements' effectiveness. Key findings include podcast ads driving brand KPI, that's key performance indicators, with a 1.7 time increase in purchase intent, 2.4 times brand favorability for high-ticket categories, such as automotive, and a particular sweet spot for respondents 35 to 44 years old with higher purchase intent and overall brand favorability due to podcast ads. Lee notes that key to podcasting's substantial and increasing reach is an authentic and natural style. used to attract both guests that boost the show's profile and maintain a parasocial relationship with fans. According to Lee, quote, consumers globally point to podcast ads as trustworthy, relevant, and useful. In the US, the fact that they capture my attention is also more pronounced. As podcasts are increasingly viewed as a trusted source of information, whether that be for life advice, news updates, candid conversations, etc., brands must understand how to leverage that trust and engagement to increase consideration, end quote.
Finally, it's time for our quick hits. These are articles that didn't quite make the cut for today's episode, but are still worth including in your weekend reading this week. 1 in 3 Americans report having changed their opinion on a topic or brand discussed in a podcast, new survey finds. A new survey from Quill looks at how podcasts don't just connect with listeners, but influences them as well. Introducing Podpage listener surveys. Podpage has added a listener survey tool for anyone using its website service, inspired by Tom Webster's The Audience is Listening. iHeartMedia reports results for Q3 2024. Notable standouts in this report include iHeart's podcast revenue increasing 11% year over year to $114 million. Spotify reports Q3 2024 earnings. Spotify has also shared their Q3 earnings, with paying subscribers reaching 252 million in Q3 and ad revenue up 6%. And IAB Australia's Audio Advertising State of the Nation survey for 2025 is now accepting submissions.
And that was The Download, brought to you by Sounds Profitable. I know we went through today's stories fast, so be sure to check out the links to every article mentioned right in your podcast listening app or on the download section of soundsprofitable.com. And thank you for sticking with us as we bring you the top stories you might have missed from the past week. I'm Newton Shadowcotty.
And I'm Gavin Gaddis. Our producers are myself, Newton Shadowcotty, Brian Barletta, and Tom Webster. Special thanks to Spreaker for hosting The Download, and thanks to you for joining us. Robot?
Download complete.